Political parties and social organizations in Argentina mobilized this Friday in defense of democracy and solidarity with Vice President Cristina Fernández Kirchner after the assassination attempt against her. In Chile, the campaigning period concludes with a ban of all demonstrations or public meetings of all electoral nature. Secretariats and propaganda organizations will remain closed. In the city of Donetsk, 21 miners were trapped after an underground blackout as a result of Ukrainian hostilities. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrera from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. Political parties and social organizations in Argentina mobilized this Friday on defense of democracy and in solidarity with Vice President Cristina Fernández Kirchner after the assassination attempt against her. Different social and political organizations called their supporters to gather in Plaza de Mayo and other places in the country after the authorities decreed this Friday as a holiday after the population to express their repudiation to violence and hatred. From the moment of the attack against Cristina Fernández, demonstrations have been held with a slogan with a flag to defend democracy in solidarity with the Vice President. Political, religious and social leaders and presidents from different countries expressed their repudiation of the assassination attempt and request that FATA be clarified. United Nations spokesperson Eric Anuko expressed UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres' condemnation of the assassination attempts against President's Vice President Cristina Fernández Kirchner and his solidarity with the political leader.
Yes, the Secretary General was shocked at this news. He condemns this violence and he expresses his solidarity with the Vice President, the government, and the people of Argentina.
The Argentinian sociologist and political science Atilio Boron said in an exclusive interview for teleSUR that he considers the attack against Argentina Vice President Cristina Fernández as an unprecedented attack in the democratic history of the country.
It is really an extremely worrying case. It has already been said. It is commonplace to repeat it. It is an unprecedented attack in the history of the Argentinian democracy. And allow me to say it, it is the natural result of that kind of famous hate speech, of that call to violence, of that permanent denigration, of that non-stop defamation to which Cristina Fernández has been subjected to for many years.
Atilio Boron also points out that there was an absolute failure in the security measures surrounding the Vice President.
It's going to be necessary to purge the security agencies. As the media has been reporting, there has been an absolute failure of the 2 or 3 security checkpoints that supposedly surrounded Cristina. In addition, something very elementary, when there is an attempt against some figure, such as the President of the United States, for example, the first thing that happens is that those who protect that person rush at him and throw him to the ground. Here, nothing of the sort happened. That woman was there. She was an easy target. And they put a gun 10-15 centimeters away from her head. Miraculously, the mechanism did not work properly. That's why the bullets were not in the chamber, but the man triggered twice. That is why it seems to me that it is not only a legislation issue, but an organizational issue.
In Chile, the campaign period concluded with a ban of all demonstrations or public meetings of an electoral nature. Secretariats and propaganda organizations will remain closed. The data will be used by voters to reflect on the opinion of approving or rejecting the new constitutional text. The Electoral Service informed that a vote for this plebiscite will be obligatory for every voter living in the country. In the case of more than 97,000 eligible to vote abroad, the vote will be voluntary. This Thursday, the campaign for the approval and rejection of the constitutional text carried out closing ceremonies as established in its electoral schedule. In an interview for teleSUR, Chilean sociologist Francisco Coloane highlighted the historical importance of the constitutional referendum for Chile.
It is a historical issue playing out, unique in the history of the whole republic, of the whole history of Chile. And it is the first time that there is a real election, a plebiscite of this nature that writes or produces a democratic constitution written by a constituent elected by the people is unprecedented.
Peru's Vice President Dina Boluarte called for respect for Pedro Castillo's presidential mandate after Congress announced a new impeachment request. Vice President Boluarte urged to respect the will of the citizens who chose by means of the vote and a parliament and a new presidential formula to govern for 5 years. This will be the third impeachment request that President Castillo will face since he began his administration in July last year. In this sense, he denounced that the congressional opposition party intends to base its impeachment request on the evidence that has caused the public prosecutor's office to open 5 investigations for alleged corruption against the president. The Council of State of Colombia issued measures for mining reorganization in order to correct the environmental protection deficit in the sector. The entity pointed out that the decision was made due to the existence of zones that belong to the national system of protected areas that should be cataloged as mining exclusion or restriction zones. Therefore, the Council ruled that a complete delimitation must be made in order to avoid that a mining title is granted over an area that is not permitted or protected. The State Council also stated that in order to apply for a mining title, the interested party must have a certification providing that mining is permitted in the area of interest. On Friday, September the 2nd, marked the International Day for Peace and against the blockade on Cuba, which will be extended for 5 weeks. The Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples, through its Director of Communication and Documentary Historical Heritage, explained that the program seeks to extend recognition to the Cuban revolutions, committed to the maintenance of world peace, respect for sovereignty of the people, and nuclear disarmament. Additionally, the events scheduled for Friday until October 10th will pay tribute to various personalities of world history whose birth or death dates coincide with this period. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. In Germany, more than 800 flights were cancelled and 130,000 passengers had to stay up due to a 24-hour strike carried out by pilots of Lufthansa. The pilots of both Lufthansa and Lufthansa cargo called on a strike after the wage negotiation with airline failed. The Caphead Pilots Union is seeking to a 5.5% wages increase by the end of the year, automatic compensation for inflation, and an adjustment of their wages scale. Due to the widespread inflation, workers all over Europe are going on strike to safeguard the purchasing power. According to the official data, in Germany alone, consumer prices have risen at 7.9% annually. The president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, called for early presidential and legislative election in order to implement a package of amendments to the country's constitution. The head of state explained that a new mandate of people's truth is required to implement reforms aimed at building a new, just Kazakhstan. Presidential elections will be held in the autumn of this year, while legislative elections, both national and local, will be held in the first half of 2023. Tokayev added that he intends to run for president again and propose a limited presidential term to 7 years without a right of re-election. In the city of Donetsk, 21 miners were trapped after an underground blockade as a result of Ukrainian hostilities. The Ministry of Coal and Energy of the self-proclaimed republic reported that there are no fatalities and that they are working to evacuate the miners. In addition, 2 more miners in Donetsk were left without power due to the shelling. This development comes after 13 employees of the Ministry of Energy Emergency Situation of Donetsk were killed on Thursday as a result of shelling of the Rubsy village by the Ukrainian army. For its part, Russia stated that it will continue the special operation to protect the Donbass from Kiev's aggression. The International Atomic Energy Agency's mission has completed its first inspection at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and will establish a continued presence at the facility. The Ukrainian energy company, Energoatom, the one that runs the plant, announced that 5 representatives of the International Atomic Energy Agency will remain there, supposedly until September the 3rd. For his part, the Director General of the UN nuclear regulator, Rafael Grossi, told the press that after completing the first tour, they decided to stay. He also pointed out that experts were able to gather a lot of important information during the several hours of work at the plant, and that he personally observed key things and received the necessary clarification. In Ukraine, the International Atomic Energy Agency mission said it had witnessed Ukrainian attacks on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Moscow said that they hope the international community takes into account the agency's assessment. The head of the Atomic Agency, Rafael Grossi, said that along with experts, they were able to observe the impacts of heavy artillery on the roof of the fuel storage inside the plant. An agency spokesman warned that with such attacks carried out by the forces loyal to Kiev, they are playing with fire. In a clear reference to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, the head of Atomic Agency, Rafael Grossi, said that he would not comment on the opinion of the head of state, but clarified that he did say that the militarization of the sun is something that escapes the agency. teleSUR dedicates its coverage for the football World Cup Qatar 2022 to the figure of the Aguarmando Maradona, who accompanied our crew in the last 2 World Cups. With a football star, we also toured our continent with the show The Sur de Viajero. We want this tribute to have its own music. With this in mind, we invite you to write and compose a song for teleSUR's coverage of the Qatar 2022 Football World Cup. It must be an original song, never recorded before or published in any media, and free of legal attachment. Record a song in any format, WAV, MP3, even with your cell phone, and send it as an attachment to comunicaciones@telesurtv.net with the following information: author's name, nationality, and name of the song. The closing date of the call for the entries is September 10th, 2022. A jury of prestigious musicians and composers from the region will select the winning piece. The prize will be the recording of the song, a video clip, and a wide diffusion of the work. 1 week after the closing of the call, teleSUR will announce the results. And we have more news coming up after this final short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. A suicide bomber struck one of the biggest mosques in western Afghanistan on Friday, killing at least 18 people and injuring 23 others. Plus, victims include prominent pro-Taliban cleric Muhim-ur-Rahman Ansari, who earlier this year had a call for those who committed the smallest act against the government to be beheaded. The suicide bomber approached the imam while performing the Friday prayer before setting off the explosion. Violence had largely declined since the Taliban returned to power last year, but in recent months, the country has been rocked by several bombs blasts. Since it triggered minority communities, and many such attacks have been claimed by the jihadist Islamic State group. Palestinian protests once again the Demolition of the village of Al Nabi Samuel outside the archaeological and religious site of Tomb of Samuel. Thousands of demonstrators gathered to denounce the violations of the Israeli occupation forces against the villages and its residents. Protesters raised a slogan denouncing the hostile practices of the occupation and demanded the removal of the occupied barriers that turned the place into a prison. It is noteworthy that Israel has triggered the village since 1971, when 80% of its homes were demolished and isolated from the West Bank by the wall. In Mexico, Storm Javier is approaching the west coast of the nation and is expected to produce intense winds and rainfall in at least 5 states. The National Meteorological Service informed that the tropical storm is located approximately 380 kilometers southwestern of Cabo San Lucas, Baja California, on the Pacific coast of Mexico. The meteorological agency warned that the rainfall generated by the systems could increase the levels of rivers and cause overflows and floods in the affected areas. For this reason, it urged the population to follow the instructions of state and civil protection authorities to prevent damages and human losses. Authorities at the British territory of Gibraltar report that a bulk carrier that collided Monday with a liquefied natural gas tanker of the region coast began on Thursday to lack its own fuel oil. Since the collision on Monday, the two vessels had been beached at Gibraltar's Bay, and a bomb or the floating barrels have been placed to contain the spill. Besides, the pumping out of the fuel remaining in the carrier's tank. Although the floating fuel has escaped the perimeters of the bomb, authorities have said the spill is under control. No one was injured in the accident, and the carrier's 24 crew members were evacuated. The liquefied natural gas tankers suffered no significant damage. Gibraltar, the seaport, has been mostly closed since the accident. teleSUR English continues to grow. It is in an reaches Europe, and you can order it from your cable dealer or tune it yourself. These parameters that you see on the screen have been placed since July 1st, and quite soon, but the changes will be implemented for the signal in the Middle East and Africa. Now more than ever, the world connected to us and our stories are being heard all around the globe. This is multi-platform will continue providing trustful content to oppose the hegemonist media's narrative and our faithfulness to our audience. With that story, we have come to the end of This Brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. And now you can also follow us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. For teleSUR English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.